I've lived in 5 different countries, and they've got very little in common. Spanning 4 different continents, each of them has its own culture, landscapes, and languages. So I thought, why not comparing them? I want to figure out which one is my favorite and what's the worst country I've lived. Of course, I have my own thoughts about this, but will the final score reflect my feelings? The countries are Brazil, where I'm from, the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE, Belgium, Chile, and New Zealand, where I am now. If you have plans of traveling to one of these places, that's a great place to start because you're gonna hear the opinion of someone who was a resident, and I'm gonna give you some tips along the way. This is what I'm gonna do. First, I'm gonna give you a better context and tell you my story and what made me move to that country, how long I stayed. Then we're gonna talk about 4 main aspects of each of these countries. First, culture and language, then climate and landscape, safety, and finally, cost of living. I chose these 4 aspects because I think they are the main ones that affect the overall quality of life. And these are the things that I think at first, if I need to move to another country or if I need to choose the next place that I'm gonna live. And I'm gonna rate the country for each of these aspects. So I'm gonna give it a score of 1, 2, or 3. 1 meaning not good, bad, 2 meaning more or less, medium, and 3 meaning great, good. So in the end, in theory, the country that gets more points is my favorite country and the best one I've lived, and the one that I should be right now. Starting off with Brazil, the country that I'm from. More specifically, I'm from Rio de Janeiro. No, I'm not gonna speak like a gringo. I'm from Rio de Janeiro, and I've spent roughly 24 to 25 years in Brazil. And before I start rating, I just want to tell you a quick disclaimer. This is 100% my personal opinion. If you've lived there or if you're from one of these countries, don't take anything personal. This is all based on what I lived in my stories. You might have had completely different stories than mine. And one more thing, I am comparing these 5 countries, yeah, just among themselves. I'm not comparing one of the countries with the whole world. I know that the world has serious problems. Some countries, they go through lots of difficulties, and life there are much worse than the countries I've lived, because I was lucky enough to live in great places. I am really just talking about these 5, and I'm comparing one with another. Clear? Right, so we can start with the culture and language part of Brazil. This is gonna be a score 3, obviously, because it's my own culture, it's my own language, it's just the place that I fit. Yeah, plus if you're a foreigner and you don't speak Portuguese, I think you can still survive very well in Brazil because lots of people, they speak English, especially the younger people. English is getting much more and more in the Brazilian culture, and it's getting more natural. Even the older people, they make a lot of effort to communicate with foreigners. So I think it's a great place to be as a foreigner, especially in the big cities. You can go like to the doctor, you can get a cab very easily, and like do your stuff if you just speak English. So that's gonna be a 3. Moving on to climate and landscape. Brazil is one of the most beautiful places you can ever be. If you like hot weather, you get hot weather. If you like cold weather, just go to the very south of Brazil and you're gonna get cold weather. If you like mountains or deserts or forests or islands, you get everything in one single country. So it's super diverse, you can make everyone happy, and there's no other place that can compare. Not even New Zealand. I love New Zealand, but the beaches and the hot summer in Brazil, it's just the win. Brazil so far gets 6 points, yeah, 3 and 3. Does it mean that I should move there? Not really, because the next aspect, safety, it's gonna get a 1. Brazil is not the safest place on the planet. It has lots of safety issues. Actually, it was the main reason why I left the country the last time. If it were a safe country, I would probably still be there. But I chose not to. I cannot get used with the fact that you cannot use your phone while you're walking on the street. You have to put fences and cameras around your house for safety, that you cannot bring your valuables with you if you're traveling, or you need to avoid having very expensive stuff because they just can't be taken away. Safety is one of the most important things for me. I need to feel safe, to feel free. And I had lots of relatives and friends that either suffered from a robbery, or they were stolen, or they were hijacked, because this also happened. Or they suffered from Bulgaria. So there are a bunch of different things that happen to these people that luckily never happened to me in Brazil, nothing like major, but with people that I love. And these things happened, these incidents happened very, very close to me. And that's really, really scary. Yeah, just scary, and I couldn't handle it. So if you're a foreigner, you're traveling to Brazil, be really careful, especially if you're in big cities. Be careful with your stuff because things do happen, and this is why I left. Yeah, so safety is gonna be a 1. And now to finish, the cost of living in Brazil, that's gonna be a 3 because compared to the other 4 countries, it has one of the lowest costs of living. Of course, that people that are from Brazil and they work in Brazil, the salaries or the opportunities in the job market, they are not great. So that kinds of balances with the cost of living, and it can feel like the cost of living is high, but it's not so high if you look at other places. Plus, because of the diverse nature and the rich soils, most of the food that Brazilians consume within the country, they are produced there. That makes the food much more affordable, which is great. Brazil got so far 10 points out of 12, which is great, much better than I thought. Moving on to the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE. I moved there when I was 23 because I got a job as cabin crew at Emirates Airline, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I never thought I would live in a country in the Middle East. That was really different from everything else I've experienced. And speaking of culture and language, I need to give it a 1, but that definitely doesn't mean that I'm telling you that the culture is bad or anything like that. I'm just saying that for me as a Western, it was really difficult to adapt, yeah, due to the different traditions, due to the more strict social norms. All of these things were difficult for me. And I think that even if I had spent 20, 30 years there, I would still not feel that I belong to the place. But there's one good thing, which is the language. I could communicate perfectly fine because English is the second language. Yeah, Arabic is the first, English is the second, and everyone speaks English there. It was just easy for me to communicate. Now, speaking of climate and landscape, this is one of the main reasons why I couldn't stay in the UAE much longer. Living in the desert is really difficult. I couldn't cope with that because I really love mountains and forests and green, and you cannot have it there. The little green that you have in the parks or like places where they plant trees, you know, those are made and maintained by man, so that doesn't feel so real, and I felt suffocated sometimes. Desert is not my thing. Some people can get used to it and they're fine. I was not. I really missed like going to the parks. And another thing that made it hard was that summer is crazy hot. It's just, you can't bear it. You staying outside or like breathing the air because it's super hot. You cannot enjoy like being at the beach or anything like that. The UAE is the opposite of other countries. Other countries, when it's summer, it's when the activities happen and then people do more stuff outside. The country is more active. The UAE is the opposite. Everything like stops and closes down, shuts down during summer, and lots of new activities or new things, you get to do it only when it's winter, only when it cools down a little bit. If you're planning to go to the UAE, to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, just go in the winter. That's the best time to go. You're gonna see that the restaurants are open. You don't need to stay in the AC all the time. It's still warm during the day, but at night can get chilly and in the early morning. So it's fine to go other periods of the year, but avoid going in summer if you're not used to this weather. So yeah, it's a 1. It was not easy at all. Then if we're talking about safety, the UAE is one of the safest places on the planet. I felt free to go out there the time that I wanted, to go back home the time I wanted, in the early mornings, to get the metro at night, to get a cab in the early morning to go back home. Like, it was totally fine. I never heard of anything that happened there. So yeah, that's a 3 for sure. Now, cost of living. Is the cost of living in the UAE high? Yes, it is high, but still I'll give it a 2 because I feel that the government facilitates a lot. They provide a lot of activities that you can do for free. Plus, you're normally very well paid in there. And I always say that the UAE is a place that if you're gonna live, you gotta be smart. you have to live a normal life, then it's perfectly fine for you to save money. But if you live a luxurious life, and if you do the things that the famous people go there and do, and if you want to live in a penthouse, and if you want to have the most luxurious car, then obviously it's going to be hard for you to save money. Because if you feel like spending money, that's a place you can spend a lot of money. So just be smart. And talking about food, yeah, food can be quite expensive because, as you can imagine, it's a desert, so it doesn't produce a lot of food. The UAE has to import lots of food from other countries, which makes it a little bit more expensive. Total points of the UAE is 7. Now it's Belgium time. After resigning from my cabin crew job in Dubai, I moved to Belgium under a work visa, and I stayed in Belgium for more or less 1.5 years. Now, speaking of culture and language, Belgians are really great people. They're friendly, they're helpful, they're really open for foreigners. They like to help you with anything that you need, so I felt very welcomed there. However, Belgium's official languages are Dutch and French, and I only speak English and Portuguese, so that wasn't a fit. So I have to give it a 2, only because of the language. Belgium is a country that is split in 2, if I can put it like that, because the northern part, which is the Flanders, they speak Dutch, and the south part, which is the Wallonia, they speak French. Despite this fact, I didn't have any issues to live in Belgium for this 1.5 years because I could survive with only my English. Most of the people in the Flanders region, they do speak English and they're happy to help you and do things for you as a foreigner and speak English to you. I felt really welcomed there in general. And also an observation here, because I lived in the Flanders and these two regions, they are very different. My experience is based in the Flanders. If you go to Wallonia, you might see other things and maybe not so many people speak English. So it's a different scenario that I don't know much. So everything I say is based on what I lived in Antwerp in the Flanders region. Now, speaking of climate and landscape, I have to give it a 2. Even though Belgium is a beautiful country, don't get me wrong, there are not so many mountains. The terrain is quite flat and I missed the mountains. It's also quite cold and it rains a lot throughout the year. So it was completely different from the UAE, what I was used to. Sun all the time and hot weather, and then I moved to a cold place, rainy. I couldn't adapt that easily, so that is a 2. But safety-wise, the score is a 3 because it's one of the safest places that you can be. You don't hear about bad things happening around the city, but if you're traveling there and you're going to a bigger city, the only thing that I advise you to do is that when you park your bike, just lock your bike because theft incidents can occur, but it's not something that is common or anything. And I don't have anything to say about safety in Belgium. I felt pretty safe. It's just a great place. And the cost of living, yeah, that is a 1 because Belgium does have a very high cost of living, and among all of the countries that I lived, it's the one with the higher cost. You're gonna pay high in rent, you're gonna pay high to do basically anything. Of course, you're well paid, but you have to be really careful. I'm not a person that buys a lot of stuff or consumes a lot, but still, I felt it really, really hard to save money there. Plus, the food is expensive, so you're gonna pay more. It also imports a lot of food from other places. And if you like to eat out, well, it's not the best place for you because restaurants are really, really, really expensive. So yeah, Belgium has high cost of living. What to do? If you like this video up to now, remember to like it and subscribe to the channel. I'll keep bringing my perspective of the world, my day-to-day life, and much more. I hope you enjoy it. Now Chile, the 4th country I lived. After living in Belgium, I went back to Brazil, stayed there for a couple of years. Then I moved to Chile and stayed 6 months. What made me go to Chile? Well, I had to stay there for 6 months so that I could bring my dog to New Zealand to do the import process for my dog to come to New Zealand. So it was not a place that I chose to be. It was a place that I had to be. But it was fine. It was a nice experience and something else, something extra that I lived in my life. And just bear in mind that where I lived was Santiago, the capital. It's a big city. It's really, really different from the rest of the country, the countryside, the nice place that we see in the pictures. If you Google Chile now, you're gonna see like amazing pictures of landscapes, of Patagonia, of Atacama Desert. You're gonna see lots of great stuff. but this is not what I lived. I had real life in Santiago, and all of my experiences and all the scores that I'm gonna give, just bear in mind that it's based on that, and it could have been really much different than what I'm gonna tell you if I had lived in these other places. So starting from culture and language, the score is going to be a 1, unfortunately, because it was really difficult for me to communicate there. You might think, well, you speak Portuguese, that's similar to Spanish, so you can live with that. No, I failed lots of times that I tried to communicate, that I tried to understand people or be understood. People couldn't understand what I said many times. So it was really hard. During these 6 months, I needed to seek medical advice. I needed to do some stuff, more basic stuff, and had contact with people there. But it was not easy most of the times because the Chileans, they don't speak English, most of them, at least the ones that I had contact with. And I didn't work there, so I was still working remotely, from home in my apartment there in Santiago. So I didn't have much contact with people there, and I couldn't develop my Spanish. So that's gonna be a 1. And now, speaking of climate and landscape, as I said, Chile has beautiful nature. It has waterfalls, mountains, stunning scenery, but I didn't go to these places. I stayed in Santiago most of the time. I did travel once to the mountains to see snow and stuff like that, but it was not amazing as Patagonia is or as the desert is. So because I stayed in Santiago, my score is going to be a 2 because the city is quite polluted and it's really dry, especially in the summer. Not the best, but I know that there are beautiful places, so that's going to be a 2. Safety-wise, Chile does have low crime rates if you compare to other Latin American countries, but if you compare with the countries that I lived, it's not safe. And I have to give it a score 1. Lots of Chileans, they told me to be extra careful when walking on the streets, careful with my bags, my things, and my dog. And they told me not to arrive home late ever or to leave the house late at night. Things happened around my neighborhood. I lived downtown Santiago, so you can imagine that it's quite empty on the weekends and empty during the night. Thank God nothing ever happened to me during this period of 6 months, but you have to be careful if you're traveling there, as a tourist, especially if you're staying downtown, as I did. And the cost of living, well, I'll give it a 2 because it's low if you compare to the UAE or Belgium, but it's a little bit higher than Brazil. But it's a good place to travel, financially speaking. So if you're gonna be a tourist there, it's fine. You'll find a way of traveling on a budget to Chile for sure. And the total points of Chile is 6. And finally, New Zealand. After living in Chile for 6 months, I could move to New Zealand with my dog, Electra, and here we are. It's the final destination. Me and my boyfriend, we are here under a work visa, and it's just a dream. I always loved this place, and I fell in love with it since the first time I came. I always had the country back in my mind, but I didn't find a way of coming. So I had this chance last year, and that became true. Now, culture and language. Kiwis are really nice people. They're polite, respectful, they're helpful, and they're really humble people, and that's one of the best things. And even though a large portion of the population consists of foreigners, roughly 28%, still the natives, they are really open and they're really receptive. That makes me feel like home. If you're Kiwi watching this is my big thank you. You have my heart. And English is one of the official languages, so communication is easy. The other official language is Maori, which maybe I will learn someday, who knows. Now, speaking of climate and landscape, I told you that Brazil is beautiful and it's the most beautiful country I've ever been to, and New Zealand is the second most beautiful. Despite being a small country, it's super diverse. It has mountains, beaches, waterfalls, lakes, all sorts of activities that you can do during the year. And that's the best thing, because when you're sick of some type of activity, oh, I don't want to go to the lake anymore, then it's suddenly super cold, then you can go to the mountains and go snowboarding. It changes all the time. And if you travel here in summer, you need to go back in the winter to do different things, and you're gonna see a completely different landscape and scenery. That's the nicest part of New Zealand, and it's what makes it beautiful. Safety-wise, it is a 3, because New Zealand is one of the safest countries on the planet. I had to look at the data and I was shocked to see that New Zealand is in the top 5 safest countries. So it's one of the best places you can be. Incidents do occur, but they're not so frequent or major, and when they happen in the bigger cities. And to wrap up, the cost of living, New Zealand does have a high cost of living, but if you compare it to Belgium, for instance, it's not as bad. The score is going to be a 2. Plus, I think that the best thing of living here is that you don't need to spend a lot of money to have fun, to have a wonderful life. You can do things for free, and the best things here are for free. You can go hiking, you can go to the lakes, to the parks. You can do activities outdoor that you don't need to pay for them. It's a different mindset that people here have. You don't work to show off your amazing car and your big house. People don't think like that. At least the people that I know and the feeling that I have from the country, that's why I say that the people are really humble, because they do things that nature gives them. That's why I tell you that you don't need to earn a lot of money to be happy here. Total points of New Zealand is 11. The final score is quite accurate actually. New Zealand is the #1 country, no wonder why I chose to be here, followed by Brazil, Belgium, the UAE and Chile. Sorry Chile, but I imagine it would be at the bottom of the list. Yeah, like I said before, it's not a country that I chose to live, it's a country that I had to live. And yeah, but it's an amazing place, and if you plan to travel there, it's worth it. So what do you guys think? Have you ever lived in one of these countries? Have you visited? What was your experience in these places? Maybe you had a completely different life than I did and your opinion is different. Just let me know in the comments. And if you liked watching this video, if it was fun for you, remember to like it and to subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you very, very soon.